can't shame anybody. Shaming people never, and telling people you can't buy from that and you only have to buy from this people, and you're not being sustainable enough. And it's another one of those issues that can get, it's really easy to start shaming brands or individual people for not making the absolute best decision. But it's like, just make the best decision for you, and maybe these are some tools that you can use that can help you.
Welcome, Badass Manifester. I am so glad you are here. I'm your host and head coach, Ashley Gordon, master mindset and manifestation biz expert, founder of the quantum coaching certification, and multiple six-figure entrepreneur obsessed with empowering you to create quantum leaps in your energy, your life, and your business. This is the show to help you make magic your everyday normal, where the ripple effect is real and the guest experts are world class. My mission is to power your conscious and subconscious mind with manifestation teachings, business tools, and coaching techniques to put your potential into action. Consider this your weekly up level. Are you ready for quantum transformation? Let's do this. Welcome back to the Badass Manifester podcast. I am so excited. I shared this on my story earlier, but I haven't been this excited for an interview in a really long time because this is a topic that is so important. And I have an amazing person on, a longtime friend, and her name is Cassandra Kane. She is the founder of Sieme brand, which is a sustainable leather fashion line, right? It is. Yes. Okay. And she's also the founder of Zero Lab in Florence, Italy. And she's going to share her story around her passion for sustainability and the environment, and her story of how she even got into this in the first place, and all the synchronicities that led her to Italy to start her own line. Her bravery, her courage, and her story is really, really inspiring. And she's also going to educate you a lot on just the fashion industry as a whole, where it's headed, and what you invest in and how important that is. So I'm really excited. Welcome to the Badass Manifester podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and for us to finally be doing this. I've wanted to do this with you for so long.
Yeah, it's now's the perfect time.
I know. Divine timing for sure.
Yeah. So Cassie and I have been friends for literally I don't even know how long, like a very, very long time, like almost our whole lives, pretty much. We've known each other. And just watching you grow into, I feel like you always knew you wanted to be a fashion designer. Is that true?
Yeah, I was always the kid growing up that was drawing and painting and creating just hours and hours and hours. And I was always the art kid. And I remember when I was young, I actually wanted to be a painter. And it was my parents who were like, well, there's this profession that uses creativity and art to make things people actually need and want and buy.
Yes.
And it's called a designer, and there's designers for lots of things. And no, but my mom was always really into fashion. More on the buying and merchandising side, but she loved fashion. So she really passed that on to me. My grandmother was a seamstress and my grandfather was a tailor.
Oh, cool.
They owned a fabric store.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, on my mom's side. So, and we think even back further that they were probably seamstresses and tailors even before coming over to the US. So this is definitely something that's just been running through my veins forever.
Oh, it's in your lineage. Where are your ancestors from?
We think the Polish, Russian border area. They probably came over to the United States during the pogroms in the late 1800s. My dad's side of the family is from Germany and also Russia. So it's a very common Ashkenazic Jewish lineage, but yeah.
Wow.
Nothing to do with Italy though. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, there are so many Italian Americans. I am not one of them.
That's so interesting. Yeah. But you kind of are now, like, by default.
Yes,
I feel
for sure. I've been here for almost 5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I want to talk about that too. So when your parents were introducing you to this concept of becoming a designer, how old were you when that kind of happened?
I was probably in elementary school, maybe middle school, because definitely by high school, I was like, I'm going to be a fashion designer. That's what I'm going to do. And it was just, like straight track mind of which design school I'm going to go to. I remember even up until I was probably working on my portfolio for colleges from the time I was 15. Like I remember my dad didn't really, not that he didn't believe it, but I guess he wasn't really serious about it until we actually went to an open portfolio day. I want to say when I was 17 and I was meeting with some really, some of the big art schools like Rhode Island School of Design and Parsons and schools like that. And he leaned over to the admissions officer and he was like, is she in the running? And they were like, her portfolio is really good. And he was like, oh, okay. Like, okay,
Wow.
maybe this is a thing that you could do. But I ended up going to Drexel in Philadelphia's fashion program. And to be honest, I would have loved to go to London, but I'm really happy I didn't go that far when I was so young.
Yeah.
Only that to say that I'd always had this desire to like go to Europe and participate in fashion in Europe. But I decided to go to Drexel because that was probably the first. I'd visited all these other schools, and that was the first time that I walked into a space, into a room, into a program, and I just had this gut feeling of like, yep, this is for you. This is where you're supposed to be. And so I ended up going to Drexel, which was also such a blessing because it was local. And I ended up getting a great scholarship there. So I was able to graduate without student loans at a time where I didn't understand what taking student loans on would have been.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And, I contribute that to that, maybe that was part of that gut feeling, but I'm
Yeah.
always so thankful. It was a great program. Drexel has this co-op program where you have like a 6-month full-time internship in the industry. So that's the first time I went to New York. They also have this study abroad program. At the time, they had it with the London College of Fashion. So I went to London for 4 or 5 months for a semester and studied at the London College of Fashion, fell in love with London, fell in love with Europe. That was the first time I ever went to Italy with friends on spring break. We went to Venice and Florence and Verona and with 6 of us. But I remember we were on this bus tour in Tuscany. It was like one of those bus wine tasting tours where they take you to a castle with the olive oil and the Chianti wine.
And the homemade lunch.
And the bread and the bruschetta and everything, and it's more delicious than anything you've ever had in your whole life, and it's so simple.
I want to go there.
And I was staring out over the Tuscan countryside, and I just, to this day, I can't explain it, but I called my mom and I said, Mom, I've been here before, and I've lived here before, and I will live here again. Like, it was just like, this is your happy place. Like this. Once, honestly, I was shook. Once I knew that Tuscany existed, it was very hard for me to go back to the United States and just like continue living my life.
Full blown chills.
It was like, once I knew that was an option and that was out there, it was like, I'm going to go back to New Jersey.
Yeah.
But I did go back. I went back to school and I graduated, and I ended up working in New York at Dennis Basso. Was like a very high-end furrier and couture evening wear company where they made everything in New York. And that was that was another time where I didn't have that job when I moved to New York. I signed a lease on an apartment right after graduation, kind of just being like, I have to be in New York. I will figure it out. It will work itself out, but I know I need to be here. And of course, what happened 3 days later, I ended up getting that job.
Wow.
And I was there for a few years. And since we did everything in New York, it was very expensive. It was the highest end. It was small batch production. So I didn't really start to see any of like the waste or sustainability problems in the fashion industry. It was runway. It was all of like the high end of the industry. And it was very glamorous, but also all the
What,
stereotypes.
but wait, what were you doing there? Were you designing? Were you drawing?
Yeah, I was a design assistant
Okay.
to the creative director. I graduated in 2011. So the fashion industry was really still reeling from 2008, 2009 financial crash. And so if you were a young designer or any sort of young person in the industry at that time, you really got a lot more experience than the average assistant because they had let so many senior people go over the last couple years. So even the creative director was in her 20s and was somebody that was like newly appointed. So it was kind of just the two of us really working together every day until 11 o'clock every night and weekends. But it was a great first job for sure. I was their assistant designer, and then I also
Wait, I
was
missed
the
it. What
product
was the
development.
company? What was the company?
Dennis Basso, it was called. People
Okay.
might know him from QVC. He does like a more economical line with QVC, but he also has this very high-end, high fashion runway line. He's primarily a furrier, so that's like furs and leather and exotics. And then he also does like very expensive high-end evening wear on the same level as like Oscar de la Renta or Carolina Herrera.
Wow.
So it was like everything made in-house with, in-house seamstresses and hand beating and clients coming in for fittings, like celebrity clients or just really, really wealthy, socialite women of New York.
Yeah.
So it was like very much that world.
Very cool. So you got to see a lot of different things. Did you get to go to Fashion Week?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We always did Fashion Week.
It
We
was
always did
always
like
my dream back in the day when I used to model for Fashion Week. Never happened, but I did
I
model in
remember
Bridal
that.
Week.
You did do Bridal Week. I
Did
remember
Bridal Week.
that.
Yeah. But
Yeah, Fashion Week was nuts. I remember I would pack a suitcase from my apartment in New York and leave it at work because I would work like every night until 10. And then I would go meet my friends out until like 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd come back to work again the next day at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And by the end of every Fashion Week, I was so sick.
oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, that's insane. That's
But
insane.
it really was. I remember being like 24 and being like, guys, as long as I'm home by 3:30 a.m., I'll be fine to wake up at 8 tomorrow.
Right?
Like,
Oh man,
now I
those
think about
days
that
are
and I'm like,
long gone.
long gone.
Long gone. Everyone's laughing right now because we can all relate to that.
Right? I'm like, where did that person go? But it was a different time. But I ended up then moving on after a couple of years to Ellie Tahari, which is more contemporary designer. And I was there basically outerwear for leather and accessories designer. And that was like, if you would have asked me at the time, that was my dream job because my one track mind was like, go work for a big fashion house and work your way up and become the creative director, like of a big established fashion brand. Like
well, that's what
I
I
wanted.
was going to ask you at this point. Did you know you wanted to be a designer on your own? Like, did you know you wanted to have your own line? Okay.
No, I swore to people I would never have my own line.
Okay. Got it.
Swore to people I would never have my own line. And was just like, I want to work at a big company and become a big creative director and make this huge amount of money and just have this fabulous life. And they fly me all, that's what I saw. That's what we were beginning to see at that time, like on Instagram and social media. And I don't know, I just had this very romanticized version of what the industry looked like at that level. And I worked like a dog there for 2 years. My portfolio was amazing. I'm really proud of the work that I did there. And we also did runway, and that's when I started traveling for work. It's also when I started working a little bit more at like not mass production, but like a production overseas level. So, a lot of this stuff would be made in other countries and be transported here, and fabrics would be bought in one country and then sent to another country to be made. So that was the first time that I was really hearing things like fabric inventory or, dead stock fabrics. We have X amount of dollars worth of fabric that we're not using sitting in a warehouse in a different country, or,
Wow.
just different, or, sell-throughs. I would sit in merchandising meetings and see like what was selling and what was not, and what happens to the stuff that doesn't sell and where does it go? And just really starting to understand like the bigger fashion industry. And
Interesting.
even Ellie is a contemporary designer, but he sold in Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's and Bergdorf's, and you can hit the lower price stuff at TJ Maxx and things like that, but it's not, it's still expensive clothing that we were making. We were still making all the samples in the sample room in New York, and they were still using real leathers that were beautifully sourced from Italy. I did work crazy hours at that job. And I never saw my family. I just put more than 100% of what I had into it. And I'm very proud of the work that I did there, but it was really eye-opening in like, okay, maybe this isn't the life that I want.
Yeah.
Like maybe this is, unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm exhausted. I feel creatively, physically, and emotionally drained. It was that I was really getting introduced to that churn of like every month it was a new collection, like not even 2 times a year or 4 times a year, but when you're really in a company that's that scale, it's like every month is a new collection. So you're just constantly, and you'll have these like
stuff.
Yeah. And maybe 50% of what you developed ends up being dropped and not used and just abandoned. And it's just this constant cycle. But I ended up getting poached from them to go launch outerwear for Zach Posen's more contemporary line called Zach Posen. And that was like another situation where I just had this gut feeling that was like the next step that I needed to take, and ended up building up that office and that line from scratch, and spent 3 years there. We ended up working on other lines because it was a third-party company. And that was when I really was traveling the world and started going back to Italy like 3 or 4 times a year. And I was going mostly to Milan, but every time I was like, I don't want to go back to even New York. Like, I just want to stay here. And that was also another instance where I was really seeing even more like what happens when stuff doesn't sell and how hard it can be to get new lines into stores. And just, because it was a smaller team, it wasn't like there was its own production team, it was a much smaller team. So when there were production problems or when there were fabric issues, it's like I was hearing a lot more about all of the issues with garments and how the choices that you make with the design really affects like the longevity of how long somebody can wear something, and wear testing things. A lot of the problem is like the calendar is so fast that to be able to properly like wear test something for 3 weeks to 4 weeks to make sure that everything functions the way that you want it to, and that it won't break off right away, or that that zipper that you chose is the right quality, or the snaps, or that fabric isn't like too soft for those kinds of snaps, so they just like rip right out of the fabric. It's like those are things you just can't always anticipate until you either A, run into the problem and get enough knowledge that you like, and that you're older and have a lot of years of experience to anticipate those things, or B, do a wear test. But the fashion industry is like such a fast cycle at this point, and just trying to churn out so much. And it's only gotten faster since, I'm talking about this.
Is that where the term fast fashion comes from? Or is that something separate?
That's the term fast fashion definitely comes from fashion that can go from production to the selling floor within like a matter of weeks.
Okay.
Because the normal fashion calendar is that you would, and traditionally you would show your collection maybe in September in order to deliver it in the spring. You would take orders all of September and October, and then you'd have November, December, January, February to produce the collection and ship it to whatever stores had ordered it, so that by March or April, when it's springtime, like it's selling.
Got it.
But so I want to say there's like, traditionally there was always a 6-month calendar, but fast fashion a lot of the time can take something that they see from social media or the runway and kind of knock it off, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term, in a couple weeks, and sometimes get it out on the selling floor before even that original design is available.
Whoa. Okay. That's so interesting.
So yeah. And now kind of even just with the ubiquity of like fashion online, and it's like a long time ago, or before, not a long time ago, before social media, the only people that really saw fashion shows were the people that were there in the room. So what was it? It was buyers, it was magazine editors, it was stylists, it was a couple celebrities that, or famous people, or really wealthy people who are big patrons of that brand. It was industry people, and then they were the ones that would show the public. They would style it, they would put it in the magazines, they would put it, even on websites, whatever. But it was kind of, with Instagram even more so than Twitter or Facebook, all of that completely went away, and now everybody can see something that's been, even with the internet, really, because WWD and style.com before vogue.com started just putting all the images of the runway shows directly online as soon as they happen. Now you can stream them on Instagram, on TikTok. So everybody can see something as soon as it's available, which is definitely changing how the industry presents. More and more brands are going to like, okay, it's September, the fashion shows, we're going to show our fall season that's going to be out in the stores. Because now it's not a show to advertise to buyers to buy for the following season. It's a show to advertise to all of our customers what we have in stores. So there's definitely that change, but then that makes it difficult because the traditional system is still very much needed for like real stores, and maybe not so much magazines anymore, but at least for stores to be able to buy things and like that, you still a lot of the time need that 6-month window, unless you're a super fast fashion brand.
Wow. This is so fascinating. It really is.
Yeah.
So
But all of that to say is, like, I was learning all of this. I mean, fast fashion really was coming up when I was, we're talking from 2009 to 2022 to now. So that, that my career has really also like, been at the same time as the rise of, Zara and H&M and, all of these kind of boho and boohoo and Sheen and even whatever, Forever 21 before that. And
yeah. Were you going to China at all in your travels?
I went a couple times. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, I still work with China to this day for some things. And, I think that China gets a bad rap all around, but, and we'll talk about this later. With anything else, like, everything is very nuanced and you just need to do your research. There's really high-end factories in China. There's factories that do really high technologically advanced production that is like water saving and, really ecologically advanced. And unfortunately, they just have a scale of manufacturing and production that no other country can compete with. And we as American consumers buy so much so often that it's really hard to replace that manufacturing capacity. It's not just clothes either, but it's, clothes is a big part of it.
Wow. Okay, yeah, we'll save that piece for towards the end of our talk. So from Zach Posen, you're learning about the industry. You're seeing, like you said, like the fact, like more of like a bird's eye view of how things are working. You're going more back to Italy. And then what happened?
So it was kind of clear that just all the lines we were working on over those couple years weren't really taking off. It was a tough time in the industry for sure, like stagnant sales. And I was kind of seeing the writing on the wall, but I ended up, I think it was March or April of that year of 2017, I fell at a party and broke my ankle. And then 3 weeks later, they decided to close the company I was working for. So all of a sudden, in the span of like 3 weeks, I was unemployed. They offered no severance, nothing. And this is not Zach Posen. This was a third-party company that we were working for him on his line. And I was just like on the couch, just
you were on your
not
ass.
really. I was on my ass, and all of this, and I was lamenting, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my rent? Um, and I had this download, as you would call it, that was like, you should go to Italy and study handbags. Because up until that point, every single company I had worked for, whenever we would do the runway shows, like at Ellie, this was definitely something that happened every season. At Dennis Basso, this happened every season. They would ask me to just put together some accessories because I worked with leather and I worked with a lot of the materials that you use to make accessories for the runway show or the presentation. And Europe fashion and American fashion are very different in that most European fashion is centered around the accessories, and the clothing is kind of like the fluff around it. Maybe they sell 5%, 10% of their profit is clothing, but the vast majority of it is leather goods and accessories and even makeup and perfume. Whereas in the United States, if you think of like Ralph Lauren or Tommy Hilfiger, you know, Donna Karan, like their clothing businesses first, and with the exception of Michael Kors and Coach, maybe like their clothing businesses first, and then accessories tend to be a second category or afterthought. So I was like, this is a great idea. I'm going to go to Italy. I'm going to study handbags, and I'm going to come back to New York, and I'm going to be like a handbag designer that studied in Italy, which is not common here. And I'll be able to kind of make that pivot in my career. And I had this, and so I just, you know, rehabbed, healed my ankle, decided to go to Italy to search these different programs. I went with our mutual, you know, my best friend, our good friend,
mutual
Mia,
bestie. Yeah.
mutual
Shout out
bestie.
Mia.
Yes, she's very Italian American, and she'd never been to Italy. And I said, I want to take you to Italy. She was not working at the time either. And everybody was like, how are two unemployed, you know, 27-year-olds going to go to Italy for 3 weeks? And we were like, how are we not going to go? Like, we have our whole lives. We have our whole lives to, you know, work and save money. But
And you were both single at the time.
Single, unemployed, and we were like, this could be the only time in our lives we have to do a trip like this, you know, as best girlfriends.
Yeah.
And we were right about that.
Yeah.
Because of what happened after. But we went to Italy together. We had, I mean, we still talk about this trip. We just had this unbelievable trip. We went to Italy and Spain for 3 weeks, Amalfi Coast, Florence. The first night we get to Florence, and we're staying near Santo Spirito in our Airbnb. We asked the Airbnb host where we should go get a drink. It's a Sunday night late. And we go to this piazza where, if you're ever in Florence, Santo Spirito is like a piazza, very popular piazza where there's tons of outdoor bars, and everybody is kind of just, you know, drinking and eating and having a great time. And sometimes there's even music. And the first night we were there, this guy rides by on a bike. Of course, his name is Lorenzo. And he goes, ciao. And I just looked at him and I was like, yeah.
You were like, ciao, baby.
Ciao. Of course, I have Mia in the background being like, don't talk to anybody we don't know. But we ended up having a great week together, minus a car accident. But I ended up looking at a school in Florence, looking at a school in Milan, and came back to the United States and was very much like, okay, I'm going to go to Italy for 3 months. And at that point, I was interviewing other places, and I ended up getting a job. And they were okay with me going to Italy for 3 months in the down season. I started this job. It was another outerwear position. But it was in the licensing side, which, to be honest, was somewhere I never wanted to be. And I walked into that office and I was like, everything in my being was like, you are not supposed to be here. You were supposed to be at that school in Florence. Like that leather school you walked into, I ended up choosing it's called the Scuola del Coio, and it's literally one of the oldest leather schools in Florence, inside the Santa Croce church. That's also like 1,000 years old. And everything in my being, nothing against this company, but everything in my being was like, you are not supposed to be here.
So
what are you doing?
What did you do? And walk out the same day?
It was the universe, because after a month, the brand I was supposed to be designing for, which was Diane von Furstenberg, pulled their contract with this company 2 years early. They were going to have to like pay all these fines and everything. They pulled out 2 years early, and the company felt so bad that they had just hired me, and, you know, now they had to let me go. They ended up giving me a really nice severance after being there for a month. Oh my God.
Stop.
And the day after I got let go, Lorenzo from Italy came to visit me in New York.
Okay. Well, you left out a little part that when you and Mia were on vacation, that like you guys were talking, like you guys, like,
Yeah, we did.
You formed a relationship.
We formed a relationship in the sense of like, you know, I was having fun with him for a week. We ended up getting in a car accident. It was kind of bad.
He was driving.
And it was a problem where they closed a lane and didn't put any signs, which if you live in Italy, you'll discover is not that uncommon. And that I saw that he was a really amazing person because his car was ruined, but he still like came. They sent him to a different hospital. He left and came and found us and sat with us all night and made sure we were okay. And not once was he mad that, you know, his car was ruined or any, you know, with these two American girls. And he was just so nice. And he ended up asking me if he could keep contact with me because he wanted a statement for the insurance company because I was sitting in the front seat. And then a couple of weeks later, he said, I really want to come to New York. I have some time off work. I found, you know, a cheap flight and I'm going to come for 6 days. And I remember being like, who are you going to stay with? He's like, you. And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even like sleeping at a friend's house. Like, I was like, my space, you know, to be honest, like I would have a date and I would have a guy over and like, at some point I'd be like, you really don't have to sleep here the rest of the night.
Like go home.
You can go. I just want to watch my face and like watch Netflix.
And not be awkward with like a stranger.
Right. And not like, exactly. And not like wake up the next morning and have to deal with this.
Totally. So what did you do?
I don't know why I said yes. I have no idea why I said yes. What was I gonna say? You already booked the ticket.
Wow. Get a hotel.
At this point, I was dating a guy in Milan from all the time that I'd gone back and forth in Milan. I wasn't dating him in the sense of like we were exclusive, but it was like he would travel to New York a couple times a year. I would travel to Milan a couple times a year. We'd always make it a point to see each other while we were in each other's towns and hang out. And I told him I was coming to Florence for 3 months. I thought it was 3 months at that point. And he said, okay, great. That's exciting. Let me know when you get here. And, you know, we'll definitely meet up. So fast forward to Lorenzo coming all the way to New York, crashing with me for 6 days. The day after I lose yet another job. I'd never lost a job in my life, to be honest. It was my biggest fear up until it happened. And now I'm forever thankful it did happen because I'm not afraid of losing a job anymore. You know, if you would have asked me at 26 years old, 25 years old, like, what's your biggest fear besides, you know, the obvious stuff? Be like, oh, losing my job and being unemployed in New York City with my rent. Okay, well, did that. You know,
it worked out and for your highest good.
Right. It was hard, but was it the end of my life? Like, no, I figured it out. I Airbnb'd my apartment and crashed on my friend's couch.
That's awesome.
But I figured it out. Anyway, so he came the day after I lost my second job in 6 months. And we had the most amazing week in New York. We did all the touristy things. I can't explain it. We did all the touristy things you never do. He didn't speak great English and I spoke no Italian at this point. So like how we communicated, the language of love is real. It's all I say. And he said, you know, if you're not working, I think you should, the program was starting the following January. Now we're in June of 2017. He said, I think you should come to Florence earlier. I'll help you find an apartment for the program. And then you can come back to the US, get your visa sorted out. And you should definitely do the 6-month program because 3 months in Florence is going to fly by. Trust me, it's not enough. If you're not working.
I agree.
And he was 100% right. Even 6 months like flew by. To be honest, I would have wished the program was like 2 years.
Yeah.
Because even 6 months flew by. But that's what I did. And he said that to me. And before I talked to my mom, my sister, my best friend, anybody, I called my landlord. I'd been in this apartment for 4 years. It was across the street from Central Park on the Upper West Side. You would have thought, like, I would have sworn to you, I would have never given up this apartment if my life depended on it. I called him and I said, I'm not renewing my lease in September before I told anybody, because I just knew in my gut that I had to do it. And I knew if I talked to anybody, they were going to talk me out of it.
Wow.
So I did. So that's what I did. And in September, I moved out of New York. You know, like I said, I spent the summer on people's couches and Airbnb my apartment so I could pay for it. I moved out of New York and I was prepared to literally just go through my savings, And that was like another one of those times, like moving to New York, that was like, you have no idea how this is going to work out, but it's going to work out. And anytime, and like, to be honest, like the universe has always shown me, like, the bigger the black hole, the bigger the unknown, the bigger jump you need to make.
Yes.
So I just went, and he picked me up from the airport, and I had 2 suitcases with me, and I was only supposed to stay with him for a month or even less. And, you know, fast forward, it's 5 years later, we're still in that apartment. I remember, yeah.
And
and we're engaged. We're getting married. we're engaged next May. But I remember, like, 6 weeks into us staying together, we went to he's a triathlete. So we went to a triathlon race, and he introduced me to his girlfriend, to his friends. And I was like, your girlfriend? What? We never talked about that. And he was like, you're living with me in my apartment. Like, what would you like me to introduce you as? And I was like, good point. But the difference was, you know, he picked me up from the airport. I get to his apartment. He bought me like some IKEA furniture just so I would have somewhere to put my clothes. He cleaned out half of like the armoire for me to be able to put my clothes to hang up. Like, he literally physically made space for me in his life, and he knew me for maybe 10 days. Whereas this guy in Milan, who I had been like, you know, off and on with for, not off and on, but, you know, casually dating for maybe a year, was like, let me know when you get to Florence and we'll meet up, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. That's the normal. I think that's like the normal, you know, response most people would have. Like, I don't even live in Florence. I live in Milan. Let me know when you get there and we'll figure out when to meet up. But no, then there was Lorenzo, who was like, you know, come stay with me. I'll share everything I have with you. I'll literally physically make space for you in my life. Like, he really is.
He's so sweet.
Yeah.
And he's so fun. I loved your
sweet
story.
And fun. He makes life. I tend to be a very serious person that's always so goal oriented, and he makes life, you know, slow down and fun and enjoy the moment.
I love that
type of thing. And I've always been very career oriented. And to be honest, I never really wanted children, because I never really was interested in being like the stay-at-home mom. And, you know, with him, like, those traditional roles are totally reversed. He's very much like, you know, that's what he wants in life, not necessarily be a stay-at-home.
I love that.
So, you know, so it's like things like that work out in really weird ways. But I came to Italy, so everything, I did the program for 6 months.
And the program taught you how to make handbags with leather.
It did. But another thing, you know, what I really want to say that's important is, like, I made this leap. I was like, I'm going to blow through my savings. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. I don't know how. Literally, as soon as I signed up for the class, a couple weeks later, I get an email from one of the old suppliers that I worked with. It's like a big international manufacturing group. And they were like, do you know any freelance designers we can hire? And I went, can they work from anywhere? And they said, yeah, we have meetings in October. We always need them to be back for, but other than that, they can work from anywhere. And, you know, here's how much we're willing to pay, like freelance 1099. And I was like, me. And all of a sudden I had a job that was going to support me in coming to Italy.
I feel like I remember talking to you during that time. Like, I remember talking to you before you went to Italy, and you were like, I'm going to do this program. Like, it's a big thing. Like, it's scary, like all that. And then I remember you telling me at some point that you got that job at the same time. And you're like, the universe is crazy.
It is. That was a crazy thing, because it was like, I have no idea how I'm going to support myself when I'm there. I might have to, you know, when you move to another country, it's not as simple as like, just go get a waitressing job. If you're here on a student visa, you can't exactly just go and work legally.
Yeah.
So it's like, and in order to get a student visa, you have to show you have a certain amount of money in the bank, or a certain amount of income that you're making in a lot of ways to support yourself while you're here. And so that was really just like, this is how it's possible here. The universe was like, yep, you're supposed to go here. This is how you're going to do it.
Wow.
And that was amazing. And then even like, as soon as I finished the program, it was like, in order to be able to stay in Italy, I needed to convert it to a worker's visa. So I needed to find a job. It was immigration law in Italy is like any other country, very complicated, but essentially I couldn't just go work for myself right after this program. I had to work for another company. Well, as a foreigner whose Italian was at that point okay, but professional working level, probably not, to be honest, to like just go find a job was,
Did you take an
um,
Italian class?
yeah, for 2 years. I took
Yeah.
for 2 years. At that point, because Lorenzo didn't speak the best English, it's much better now, but his family doesn't speak any English, which is not common here, to be honest, but his family doesn't speak any English. So I really felt like in order to be able to talk with his mother and things like that, I was very motivated, and I went to a retired teacher's house like twice a week and
Wow.
would take like 3 hours, and then she would give me homework every week. And so I was going to school, I was doing that, I was working my freelance job. And then I did end up finding a job as, it's called a prototipista. I had 3 months to find a job. Right before the 3 months ended, I found one. It's called a prototipista. They're like a high-end leather sample maker in a leather handbag factory. So I was making like the runway samples for like Dolce & Gabbana or Tod's or like all of these really big,
Wow.
European brands. And I did that for over a year. And that is when I really started to see
The
the
waist.
amount of leather waste that was being created. And I think it's because I came to Italy searching to be part of the European high fashion industry, thinking that it was the holy grail of the industry, after seeing a lot of waste and a lot of just problems in the more contemporary and mass market of like the American side of fashion. And I was like, oh, even here, like we're literally making 3,000 euro handbags, and there's still this problem. Like we're throwing away 50% of the leather because it doesn't pass quality control or something. And there's no system for trying to save this leather or repurpose it in any way. And there's no dialogue between the design room and what's going on at the factory level about like what choices that designers are making are affecting these decisions at the production level and creating so much more waste. And that's when I was like, oh, I want to do something about this. And that's when I had the idea for Sieme.
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. Keep going. Keep going. That's amazing.
So Sieme is
Yeah.
artisanal Italian accessories handcrafted in Tuscany exclusively from rescued leather. And what rescued leather means is that it's all leather that is left over from local luxury production here in Tuscany, that would otherwise be thrown out, burned, destroyed. The way it works in Italy is that leather waste is considered special waste, and it has to be like disposed of in a very special way. That usually means it's like burned or just landfilled in a special landfill. About 20 to 40% of all of like the leather material used in accessories production and shoes is discarded during the production process. In Tuscany alone, that's over 400,000 pounds of leather a year. And
Holy
Tuscany is just
shit.
one region in Italy, and Italy doesn't even account for like 30% of all of the luxury production, and that's just luxury. And then you have contemporary and mass market and, fast fashion. And so it's like, we're literally just talking, but my rationing is like, we're making 3,000, Sieme is a contemporary designer price point. Everything is based, we're coming out with small leather goods. So like, things are based from like $150, $200 all the way up to $1,000. We're not in the like Gucci and Yves Saint Laurent and Chanel price range by any means, but all of our products are hand woven leather. What we do, for me, it was like coming up with an idea of how we can use all this different leather that's rescued in all these different colors and all of these different types of leather, and how can we kind of like use the artisan history of Tuscany, and woven leather is very much a big part of Tuscany's leather story. How can we celebrate that? How can we manufacture in a way that supports small independent factories? Because
Right.
that's another thing that is difficult here, where it's like there used to be all small independent family owned factories, and now that the big luxury brands have gotten so big, a lot of them just get bought up by these big luxury brands, so that the brands can make sure that they always have enough production capacity, because they're just consistently growing. So it's great. It gives them a lot of work in this area, but at the same time, we are losing a bit of that like artisan individuality that
Yeah.
makes Italy so special. So with
I agree.
Sieme,
Like, I
really,
feel like so many of the handbags, like so many of the luxury handbags all look alike with just different logos.
yeah, yeah. And it's because even in Italy and even at the luxury level, you know, the entire production process has been industrialized, because no matter where you're producing, if you're making thousands of bags a month, you can't make it in an artisanal way. That's literally the antithesis of
Right.
artisanal. It's the
Right.
reason Hermes only makes a certain amount of Birkin bags a year and will never increase them no matter how much demand
Business.
there is, because they sew them all by hand and they're only ever going to make, you know, they don't want to jeopardize the integrity of that process. But so even, you know, that's like a perfect example of that, is that back when factories were, you know, more individualized and it was small families producing things, you know, if we go back to like the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s, before Gucci sold out, for example, it was, you know, you had one piece of leather and maybe you made a big handbag, and then you took the leather you had left and you made a smaller handbag, and then you took the leather you had left and you made a wallet, and then maybe you made a coin purse or like a card
Yeah.
holder, and you worked all the way down, and then you made a belt with like the side piece, and you literally worked all the way down to the smallest piece of, you know, bracelet or keychain or something, so that you could use as much of the leather or the material as possible. But now, like, handbag factories make handbags, wallet factories make wallets, belt factories make belts, because at the industrial level, all the machines are slightly different. You know, you want it to be absolutely perfect. So the sewing machine is slightly different to make sure it can be absolutely perfect, because a wallet is so much smaller than a handbag. Or, you know,
Right.
there's all these really nuanced things that just end up industrializing the process. And what happens is that, you know, and now, you know, for example, you have cutting factories that then send it to a sewing factory. So the one factory cuts the leather, another factory sews the leather. You know, so it's so fragmented and industrialized, even at the luxury level, that people don't see the whole process anymore. So it's a lot easier to just not see or understand how much waste is being generated. And especially as a designer, to not fully understand how the choices that you're making in the design room or the design studio impact what happens on the ground. So yeah, and that could be said across the whole industry, but I'm really passionate about leather and about Italy because, I mean, we're making really expensive handbags. If we can't solve this problem here,
Yeah.
and one of, like, you know, Italy is one of the most luxury production manufacturing hubs in the world. Italian leather is one of the highest value materials in the world. These handbags are selling for thousands and thousands of dollars each. Like, if we can't figure out how to make this system more circular and sustainable here, we have absolutely no hope for the rest of the industry.
Yeah. And like what about the animals?
So leather is over 95% a byproduct of the meat industry, and anybody who tells you otherwise is not properly informed. There
Okay.
are, you know, there are situations where it's, I think like the biggest thing I would want people to take away from all of this is like everything is really nuanced. There's no silver bullet answer to any of this, and it's like it all requires a lot of research. Because, for example, like, yeah, in Europe, because of luxury leather goods, it does, you know, there is a higher demand for leather that matches the demand for meat and increases the price overall.
Got it.
In the United States, in South America, in Australia, in other places, no, there actually isn't. In fact, last year in the United States, over 5 million leather hides were just landfilled because there wasn't enough demand to buy those skins and transform them into leather.
So you're saying just to I want to like break it down a little bit. They're not killing the animals to get the leather.
No,
That the leather is a byproduct of
product of the meat
the meat industry. Got it.
consumption.
Okay. Well, that's
Not that I'm saying that like factory farming is not
a real thing.
extremely problematic and something
Yeah.
we need to fix for sure, but you know, the price for leather only accounts on average of like less than 10% of the whole, cow. So nobody would be profitable just raising an animal strictly for the leather. When you get into exotic skins, totally different.
Yeah.
Now that's a whole different category and something that you really like need to do your research about. And just, if you're going to go that route, buy from really like established brands who you can see on their website, or they tell you exactly where that stuff is coming from, because when it's done the right way, some of that stuff actually supports indigenous communities, especially in Australia and Southeast Asia. And they use a lot of the profits from those very expensive skins to land conservation, to actually support the habitats that, it's like it's responsibly done. Some of it is not, and some of it is terrible and needs to be out and is illegal.
Yeah.
It's very nuanced. So this is where it's like, unfortunately, as a consumer, as a customer, we have to take it upon ourselves. And this goes far beyond, leather and skins and stuff is the easiest one to start with because it comes from animals. But it really goes for across the board, because whether you're using fabrics or you're using faux leather, which 99.9% of the time is petroleum-based plastic, it's up to us to just like make better choices that will more positively affect the environment and what we put on our bodies ultimately.
Right. Because I mean, I ordered maternity clothes from Sieme, and you sent me some articles and you were like, girl, like, no. And I appreciated that.
Yeah. And I mean, you're my friend and I know that you're pregnant, and I was like, do not put those on your body, please. Because Shein has been being recalled in certain countries for having lead, toxic levels of lead, but that can be said for, a lot. What I always say is like, when you're buying something that's really cheap, somebody's paying for it somewhere. Yeah. If it's not you, it's somebody else. So either it's being made, it's either a person in another country who's doing the labor, or it's the environment. Because there's really no way to make a t-shirt for $2, $5. I mean, the amount of water it takes to make one t-shirt is over 400 gallons. Wow. Like it's the amount of water it takes to make a pair of jeans is like 1,800 gallons. So there is technology that can do it with all recycled water or waterless or really drastically reduced, but those are not the $2 and $5 t-shirts. You know what I mean? You're buying $20 jeans. Those are being made from synthetic indigo that is really toxic, and maybe made in factories in places where there's not really good, where they're skirting local environmental and labor laws. And, maybe it's even an illegal factory because they can charge that price. They're not paying people, the wages that they should be paid, and they're not disposing of the chemicals in the way, even if it's just dyes or things like that, in the way that they should be disposing of them. So they end up in local waterways, and, it contaminates the water for local populations. I mean, it's just.
What do you feel like there's a cure? Do you feel like there's a cure for all of it? Or is it just awareness for people not to buy it? And if enough people don't buy it, then maybe they won't sell it.
I think with the exception of a couple of brands out there, to be honest, there's nothing that is like, there's really nothing that is totally like off limits, I want to say. It's more about our culture of like buying things and wearing them once or two times or three times and then thinking they're old and discarding them.
Yeah. It's
our culture of not taking care of the clothing we buy and seeing them as an investment, something we're going to have for a long time. When you buy a $3,000 bag, what do you think you're going to do with it? You're either going to keep it and really take care of it, or you're going to keep it for a while, take care of it, and then resell it and like keep it in use and in the market. It's an investment. And really, we need to view all clothes like that, because even something you buy at H&M or Zara, you can have for 10 years if you take care of it. If you, don't just, I don't know, wear it into the ground, don't wash it the way it says it needs to be washed, whatever.
Or just get over it.
It breaks and you don't get it repaired. You just say, oh, like, I've had these pants for 2 years and the zipper broke and I'm going to throw them away. And it's like, or you could take them to your local tailor or seamstress and have her put a new zipper in.
Right.
because you're throwing that garment away, but it, especially, it's also, I don't purport like only buy from sustainable brands, because a lot of times, unfortunately, more sustainable brands are more expensive. People don't always have a ton of money to spend on clothing. It's more like, look at the fabric content, if it's natural fibers like cotton or linen or wool, in the summertime, it's going to keep you cooler. And in the wintertime, it's going to keep you warmer than synthetic fabrics. And B, like those do actually break down eventually in the environment. Whereas like poly, nylon, PU, vegan leather, for the most part, vast majority, like never really breaks down. It's plastic.
Interesting. When you wear like stuff like that, does it get into your skin?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing as microplastics, right? So it's every time you wash it, it's shedding microplastics into the water systems. Every time we wash them in our washing machines. And then we're ingesting those microplastics into, the vast majority of microplastics are things that come from our clothes. So that is found in water, because we wash it in the washing machines, and then the water from the washing machines gets dumped into local waterways, which eventually makes its way out into the ocean. So a lot of the microfibers actually are from the clothes that we buy. That's not to say you should never use polyester. If you're skiing or you're doing a sport, or you're, I don't know, climbing a mountain and you need some really heavy duty outerwear, sure. But again, that's not stuff that you're probably going to buy and then get rid of in a couple, you're not going to wear that. Those are investment things also. You're not going to wear them 3 times, then get rid of them. Like everything has its place, I guess I'm saying is, but there does, it does help to just
be aware,
on the lookout, and when you go to buy something, don't think of it as like, I'm buying this to wear to this one thing, and then I'm gonna, just throw it away. And instead of throwing things away, find out, try to take care of your stuff so that you can donate it and somebody would actually want it, because unfortunately the vast majority of things that are donated to Goodwill or to Salvation Army, like, just end up going directly into the trash. You're just giving it to somebody else to have to sort and figure out. So, if you're going to donate things, like donate things that, somebody might actually want to wear. Yeah.
Right. Like decent.
And not just like your trash t-shirts with holes in them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a t-shirt with holes in it, cut it up and use it as a rag to clean your house. Like, nobody at Goodwill, they're just going to throw that into the trash, and it's either going to go into a landfill, or worse, it's going to get sent in a container full of other used clothes to a country, usually in Africa or Southeast Asia, and end up in a clothing dump somewhere. So, it's more about like seeing clothing as an investment and taking better care of the things that we buy. And then there are some companies out there that, really, I think any company that is churning out that much clothing, like, to be honest, as much clothing as Shein turns out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's something like from 4 pieces to 6,000 styles every day.
Yeah.
On their website.
Yeah.
Like, that's a red flag, because it takes a lot to make a new product. Somebody has to design it, a pattern has to be made, a sample has to be made, it should be fitted, it has to go to a factory. The vast majority of clothing, like with the exception of sweaters, everything is still made by hand. It's still like pushed through a sewing machine by hand. I mean, just the fact that you can deliver that many styles that quickly at that scale is like a clear sign that something somewhere is being exploited.
Yeah.
And it's probably everything but you in order to get those prices. Nothing is really free. We always say that nothing's free. Somebody's always paying for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just curious, like, and if they're putting lead on their clothes, then obviously you're also being exploited, because you're getting this toxic material. Like, what is with the lead?
So I think what happens there is, like, fabrics are dyed. They're dyed. They're all dyed with chemicals. For the most part, they're not dangerous, but every now and then something can go wrong. And normally there are, across the world, and especially importing into the United States and Europe, very strict labeling laws, very strict testing laws. A lot of these factories are supposed to be regulated by certain oversight, oversight companies or organizations that certify that a factory, is treating its workers properly, is disposing of chemicals properly, is using chemicals properly, all of these things. But with a company as big as Shein, it's like they make so much profit and their whole business model is scale, that it actually is cheaper for them to just get caught every once in a while than to follow all the rules and just pay the fines when they get caught. Because the vast majority of things won't be caught because things are randomly tested. What they ended up catching was children's wear, which is more rigorously tested in most European and, in Canada and the US and most countries around the world. Children's wear is more rigorously tested because it's children's wear. So that's how they ended up getting caught. But, even if they get hit with like €100,000 fine and have to pull that style, okay, 2,000 other styles shipped that day. Like, you know what I mean? It's one in a sea of giant, so they would just rather.
It's just part of their investment.
Yeah. It's part of the cost of doing business.
Right. Wow. Thank you for explaining that. It's so just eye-opening and so important for us to know. I'm curious what the difference is. I think a lot of people love Revolve. I'm curious what the difference is between a brand like Revolve compared to like a Zara.
So Revolve is actually more of like a platform of a lot of different brands. And
right.
you'll find, and the prices vary from very affordable up to very, very expensive. So you'll find, they're more of just like a platform that has an amazing social media strategy.
Okay. So they're like a department store online that carries a lot of brands.
That carries a lot of brands.
They don't have their own brand.
No, they don't have their own brand. Whereas Zara is all its own stores, all its own brand, a lot of its own factories.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So if people are listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to be more sustainable, or I want to be more conscious of this, what would you lean towards versus obviously like staying away from maybe H&M, Zara, Shein, Lulu's, all that? What would you lean towards?
More so than just, staying away from some of the ones that are really too good to be true. More so than that, though, I would say look at the clothes, like it's the practices. You can shop anywhere, but look at what you buy as an investment. Do you think you're going to wear it at least 30 times? If the answer is no, don't buy it. There's something in the sustainable fashion industry called the 30 wear test, where it's like, if you don't think you're going to wear a garment more than 30 times, with the exception of maybe like a dress you would wear to a wedding, because the vast majority of those, what do we do with them? We donate them and somebody else takes them, or we give them to a friend, or we give them to
they get repurposed.
They get repurposed, right? Because there's more of a market for that. But with everyday clothes, let's just talk about everyday clothes, underwear and bras are a little difficult. So there's some really cool companies out there like Third Love, or there's just some good companies out there doing some things in more circular undergarments. But for all other garments, it's like,
that's
if you don't think you're gonna,
those are probably easy to like reuse fabrics that were wasted.
Or the big favorite is a company in Philadelphia that's doing like 100% cotton basics that can be like, they have like a take back program. I mean, I think if you like go to anywhere and you see like even H&M, they are trying, H&M and other stories, they have take back programs now for jeans. So even if it's not their jeans, you can bring the jeans back. So if you see anything like that, definitely take advantage of it for sure, because that's even better, than donating things that are really used and worn in. If you have jeans that have like a hole in the crotch area that you can't donate and somebody would actually want to wear, like that's a great option. But if you don't think you're going to wear something that you would buy for every day more than 30 times, like don't buy it. Take care, read the care labels. Don't just assume everything can go in the wash, and read the care labels in the store. Like if you're not somebody who takes things for dry cleaning, don't buy something that's dry clean only.
Right.
Somebody that never dry cleans, like, you know what I mean?
I like what you're saying. Yeah.
Maybe some things are like, you can wash it in cold water and hang dry. Well, if you're somebody who only ever throws things in the dryer, and you throw, the dryer is like the worst thing you can do for your clothing. Like
We
it
hang
will ruin,
everything. We literally hang.
yeah,
Todd is a freak about hanging everything. I
it will
never did.
ruin. I mean, anybody who's had a black pair of jeans and thrown them in the dryer understands this. Like they will
Yeah,
not
that's
stay
true.
black. um, but the dryer is in Italy. We really only use the dryers for sheets and towels, and we hang dry everything also, because your clothes just last so much longer hang dried, or at least do it on delicate. Wash things on delicate. Get like if you
Yeah.
can. If you're washing wool, for example, there's actually laundry detergents that are for wool and delicate items that help it like stay better longer. Looking for natural fabric things, lyocell, tencel, wool, silk, cotton, as opposed to like complete polyester. Like I said before, you'll stay warmer and cooler in the months that those things are important, but also like they do eventually biodegrade. So I think it's more like practices like that than
Yeah.
necessarily being like, what brand should I just stay away from? If you do want to like look up brands, there's this app called the Good on You app, or there's Rank a Brand. Like there's definitely apps out there that rank brands on how sustainable they are.
Oh, I love that.
So you can go and look up, not every brand is on there, but most big brands certainly are. So you can go on there and look. So there's definitely tools and resources out there. I mean, honestly, if you go to a brand's website and you scroll down and to their footer, they should have like some, at this point, because it's such a big conversation, especially after COVID, like they should have some tab that says something about
Yeah.
sustainability. And if they
Yeah.
don't, like that's kind of a sign right there that they're
That's a red
really not
flag.
even thinking about it in any way. And it might just be like, hey, we're on a journey, we're trying, and that's fine too. Like we can't shame anybody. Shaming people never, and telling people you can't buy from that and you only have to buy from this people, and you're not being sustainable enough. And it's another one of those issues that can get, it's really easy to start shaming brands or individual people for not making the absolute best decision. But it's like, just make the best decision for you. And maybe these are some
Yeah.
tools that you can use that can help you.
So beautifully said. Wow. Yes. Such an enlightening topic, like something that we've never talked about on the podcast. And I feel like, everyone listening is all about manifesting their best life, and I feel like this is just another way of doing that, where you're just really, what I'm taking away from everything you just said is like, just be more mindful, right? Be
Yeah,
more mindful with the way that you handle your clothes and with the way that you shop and the way that you take care of them, and the way that you recycle them. Like just being more mindful of it all is like super, super
absolutely.
key. It's so
Absolutely.
good. Wow. Okay. So like so right now Cassie's sitting in her office, her new headquarters, Zero Lab.
Yes.
I know we've been talking for a while. Stay with us. This is like we're getting to like the epitome here. Like tell us what Zero Lab is.
So ever since I came to Italy and was at the school, as soon as I finished the school, I was like, I want to find a place to keep working on my stuff. I had, I didn't know I was going to start Sieme yet, but I had this idea to just keep working on everything I just learned. And I could not find a space to do that. There was no shared design co-working space in a city full of artisans. There was no co-working, co-design, leather studio, garment, fashion studio space. And I was like, why? And I actually did the legwork to start one myself with a couple other expats right before the pandemic. I had this gut feeling that was like, you really need Italian partners to do this. Like, you can't do this by yourself. Don't take this on by yourself. So I put it on the shelf. Thank God I did, because then COVID happened, and the pandemic in Italy was like, everything was super shut down for a lot longer than the United States. And I continued to work on Sieme and build my brand and build the designs. And we ended up launching during the pandemic. But I still always had this idea, and it became and I always wanted to build something bigger where it was like we could begin to have a center to start receiving this leather, recycling it, working out the bureaucratic, like, red tape for why it's not getting recycled or repurposed, and just really start to save all this material and a space to grow Sieme. And as soon as the pandemic subsided, the right partner appeared literally out of nowhere. The universe literally just threw it in my lap in a bigger way, such a bigger way. And we were talking about this before we started recording, but I'm actually like scared.
Yeah.
But it's another one of those things where it was like when there was, when we opened what is the equivalent to an LLC in Italy, like, lawyers and accountants. And I just had this gut feeling that was like, this is another big black hole that you just need to jump into because you've been asking for this from the universe for the last 4 years that you've been
here. It is.
And here it is, bigger than you could have ever imagined. And so like, don't second guess it.
Yeah.
Here I am kind of second guessing it, but
here I am like pooping my pants.
Right, exactly. Here I am sitting here. We opened 2 weeks ago. So Zero Lab is a design co-working center and a leather recycling center. It's the first kind of circular design co-working space in Italy. We have everything that like somebody wanting to start a brand could need to launch, including we rescue leather from the local industry. We have it available for sale here for anybody that wants to come and use it at really, at prices that are like, it costs us some money to be able to recycle all of this and keep all this running. So that's really just what we sell it for. We have a photo studio, we have design co-working offices, we have traditional co-working offices, we have like big, standing workstations. We have a whole machine lab for like garments and leather. And we have partnered with like the local leather recycle. It's called ASPRI, the Association for Recycled Leather in Italy. So it's really, and also my business partner who has a sustainable shopping platform in Italy called Zero with a W. So it's really just a huge, huge undertaking that now we need to grow and, have people come and offer
There's
courses.
Nothing like this in Florence, Italy. Like there's nothing like this where it's a circular company. Like everything is being repurposed. Like if you know someone who is a designer or wants to be a designer,
or even just wants to like take a course in leather and learn,
totally
leather craft,
this is the place to do it. And I'm so proud of you. Like talk about visionary. Holy shit. Like you had this vision and the universe was just like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Level up.
And you've invested your life savings into this space and your business.
I have. And right at the time where it's like, we're getting married, we'd like to buy a house. You know what I mean? It's like right at the time, but I'm like, nope, this is the thing. This is the thing. This is what I've been asking for 4 years. And the universe is literally handing it to me. I don't want to say on a silver platter because there's always a lot of work to do. Yeah. But, the universe is giving me this opportunity. So
right now you're running your own company, Sieme, right?
Sieme.
And you're running this lab that's like really like giving you the space to also run your company at the same time. Like you're creating everything there, right?
Yes. We make everything here in Tuscany. All the leather that we use is leather that we rescue and bring here to the lab. And then it all gets hand woven by our artisans.
And they're beautiful designs, everyone listening.
Thank you.
Definitely. The link will be in the show notes.
Yeah. And for the fall, we're coming out, like I said, with small leather goods, wallets, and coin purses, and passport holders, and just, we have small bags and large bags. And, I think what I would want people to take away is that because they're hand woven and they're using all this upcycled, like rescued leather, every single one is unique. No two are exactly the same. They can never be exactly the same. Every artisan designs the panel how they want to. And so you'll always have the only one ever made. And they're completely, made in the most responsible and circular and sustainable way that we can. And, kind of how we believe is that real leather is more sustainable than faux leather because it lasts for generations if you take care of it. So if we can use materials that are already here and repurpose them and keep them out of landfills and support local artisans and, make beautiful products. All of our bags, you can wear multiple ways. So that's another big thing with like sustainability is versatility. It can convert from like a shoulder bag or a crossbody to a clutch to a pochette, so it can take you for the whole weekend or day to night super easily, because it's not just about the materials, it's also about the design.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I'm so excited for you. So proud of you. And like,
Thank you.
I think that this story overall is a story of like, it's something that you said the whole time was you had a gut feeling each time something was right or each time something was wrong. And you were brave enough to trust it. Even when you're like, holy shit, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I don't know if this is the right path. This is like a black hole that I have to just fall into. You still went for it.
Yeah. And I have to say, I remember being in New York and thinking, like, walking the streets and thinking, what would my dream life be? And to be like, oh my God, having my own brand in figuring out some way to live in Italy and travel back and forth when I wanted to. And like, just be in Italy all the time. And and of course, it always looks different in your head when you imagine it, because you never imagine any of the challenges.
Right.
But, here I am, like, doing it. If my 26-year-old, 25-year-old me saw me now, they'd be like, what?
Right. I think about that all the time of like the older version of you coming to visit the younger version of you. That's like, keep going.
Yeah. That's like all of this path that you're on, all these experiences that you're having, they will amount to getting you to the next step always.
Yeah.
Like, every job I had is like, there's a reason that I had it. There's some knowledge I took away from it, some knowing or some, change in perception or perspective or something like that, to get me here. And I'm sure that'll continue.
It will. It will. Even like, so you're like, we were talking beforehand and you're in a moment right now of like, okay, this is really big. This is a big undertaking. Like the lab has launched. The launch party was last month or earlier this month, right?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago.
Okay. It's been 2 weeks since you've launched officially. And now you're like, okay, let's go.
Where's the people?
Where's the people? Right. So it's just one of those, it's like that next moment for you. That's like the universe is going to sweep in. It's going to give you the right person at the right time, just like it always has.
Yeah. You just have to have faith for sure.
Yeah.
And I do feel like there's always been these moments where it's kind of like this massive up level of everything in your life. For me, it's not just the space, but also choosing to spend my life in Italy, choosing to spend my life with Lorenzo, with this person. Like, all of it is this massive commitment, this massive falling into this big black hole of unknown, and just trusting that it's going to work out. And then I'm sure it'll be calmer for a couple years, and then the next huge opportunity will present itself. And that's just how life goes.
Yeah, it really is.
You're on this next big adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what's ahead, right? Like, I think I know, but like you said, we really have no idea. So we have to surrender and trust. So that brings me to my next question. I ask everyone as like the kind of final question is, what makes you a badass manifester?
Trusting my gut.
Yeah.
Trusting my gut and trusting myself.
I was hoping you
and just and knowing that the universe, my guides, I talk to my guides all the time.
Good.
Knowing that the universe they've got me for sure.
Yeah. What an inspiring fucking story. I love your story so much. Finally, we've gotten to share it all.
That was long.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
It's a long story.
It's a long story, but it was a really good story. It was a really good
Thank
story.
you.
And
you don't normally get to tell the whole thing, because you go on these platforms and it's like there's an angle or there's a specific topic, so you tell a part of your story, but it was really nice to tell the whole thing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It was beautiful. And I hope that all of you listening will do yourselves a favor and click on Sieme's website. It's going to be linked up in the show notes, and get yourself a handbag. Like, buy yourself something, treat yourself. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for the environment. It's gonna be, you'll be supporting a really beautiful person and company. So do yourself a favor and invest in Sieme and check it out. Share it with a friend. Let people know what it's all about. Tag us on social media. Let us know.
Yes.
Yeah. So where can they find you?
So the website is wearesieme.com. And the Instagram, TikTok is also We Are Sieme. There's a period in between each word. So
okay, I didn't mention this, but I studied abroad in Florence, Italy. So this is my favorite place in the universe. And I got to take Italian. So I know that Sieme means together.
Yes, it is taken from the word insieme.
Insieme, right.
Because everything we do is very much together with the planet, with the artisans, with the community that we live in. So we couldn't do it alone. So.
We are together. We are Sieme. Yeah.
We are Sieme.
I love that so much. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. This was such a good episode.
I love you.
I love you. Thank you all for listening. And go check her out in all the places. All right. Until next time. Bye. Woo! We did some work today. Thank you so much for listening. You know I love my BAM fam. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you know would love it too, because we live for the ripple effect over here. And how can you best support the show? Make sure you're subscribed, hit the 5 stars, and leave a review on iTunes, and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. I love being part of your real-time journey, so screenshot the episode and tag me and my guests on Instagram @manifestwithash. Now say it with me. I am my own power source. I am the master of my own energy, and I deserve everything that I desire. We don't just talk about it over here, we be about it. Now go get 'em.